You're listening to Indiana Jones and the Comics Crusade on the LONGBOX CRUSADE NETWORK. Hello and welcome to Indiana Jones and the Comics Crusade. I'm your host, Jared Albrecht, the Yard Sale Artist, and I will be taking you on an adventure with me as I index all 34 issues of 1983's The Further Adventures of Indiana Jones by Marvel Comics. On this episode, we will be taking a look at issue number 9. Issue 9 is cover dated September of 1983. Its script is by Archie Goodwin and David Michelinie. Penciler is Dan Reed. Inks is Danny Bulinati. Letterer is Joe Rosen, colorist Bob Sharon, and editor is Luis Jones. Here's the cover description for issue 9. This cover is drawn by Howard Chaykin and inked by Terry Austin. The Marvel Comics Group banner is orange with black letters, and Indiana Jones stands pistol ready in his orange corner box. The title logo is white with orange highlights, and the main action depicts Indiana Jones falling from the ledge of a New York skyscraper. The agent of Indy's doom stands on the ledge that our hero is falling from. It is a native warrior with a shield in one hand and a spear in the other. And now for a quick story synopsis. Indiana Jones and his old pal Sala have teamed up once again in Marrakesh as they attempt to steal back the idol that Indy lost at the beginning of the film Raiders of the Lost Ark. And even though it doesn't go without a hitch, because they do end up scampering for their lives to avoid a pair of assassins, our duo is successful. The assassin duo, however, is not keen on giving up, so the mysterious blonde villainess and her native warrior partner track Indy and the idol back to New York, where the idol is the guest of honor at a party, celebrating its entry into the museum. A trio of Jovito warriors sneaks into the party, quietly takes down Marcus Brody, and nabs the idol. But a few gunshots later, Indy and Marion are hot on the heels of the Jovitos. The chase leads them to a precarious exterior ledge of the building 23 stories up, and our beloved Dr. Jones is left dangling by one hand as the warrior begins to stomp his fingers. Okay, folks, welcome back to the Temple of Longbox. Let's meet the featured guest for this episode. He made his way all the way down here into the temple. It is good friend of the show, Rick Heineken from Jeff and Rick Present Unpacking the Power of the Power Pack. Is Power Pack Don't Stop. Welcome
Indy.
to the Temple of Longbox.
Indy, throw me the rope, Indy.
If you give me the idol.
Jared, I will never, ever give you the idol.
Oh, man. What about the American Idol? What's up?
No, I think I've heard you, quote, quote, perform. And
yeah, I got a better chance of getting the actual fertility idol.
I thought we agreed we would never talk about the words fertility in any conversation we were having.
I am just messing up all over the place. Well, anyway, welcome to the show, buddy. I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. Appreciate it.
No problem. Al,
I like to swing in whenever you need a fellow adventurer.
Oh, well, I appreciate your time. And I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself to the listening audience by giving me your backstory with Indiana Jones. Now, you and I are very close in age.
Yes.
So, a lot of people say, Raiders of the Lost Ark was how Indiana Jones. What you got?
I got to tell you, thinking back to my childhood, in my mind, I've just always known about Indiana Jones. I don't know. It feels that way. Right, it just feels like Raiders of the Lost Ark has always been there. I cannot tell you when I first saw it. It had to have been VHS at my house. That's got to be it. Because I think I was probably a little too young to see it in the theater. And I don't think Temple of Doom was my first one that I saw in the theater, although I am pretty sure I watched it in the theater. But I have always known of Raiders of the Lost Ark. I've always known of Indiana Jones. And it's like osmosis. You just, as a kid in that time frame, you think adventurer, you think khakis and a hat and a bullwhip and a white guy swinging through a jungle. It's either that or Prince of Persia. I don't know, one of the two,
Quicksand. It's got to be quicksand involved.
Got to be quicksand. I mean, we were all deathly afraid of finding quicksand, and yet we both do geocaching, never have found quicksand.
I've never found quicksand. That's right. Good point. So oversold.
Media's lied to us. I can't tell you, but it's always been there. And, by the time that last Crusade came out, we were in the theater watching that and just, this is all us. That was just, we grew up for that moment in our lives. And we're like, we're of age. Bring it to us. This is everything we want. So
whole other podcast, but the lineup of movies in 1989 was insane.
Yeah.
And we were 13? About right around 13, 12, 13 years old. Perfect time. 89. Such a great year. Oh,
the time of 99-cent double feature movie theaters. Too. I mean, for God's sakes.
Yeah. I definitely cemented my love for indie like you, I think on VHS or if they were showing it on some sort of TV channel. But I did catch it on the theater because my dad took me and my brother to a Harrison Ford double feature where we saw Raiders and Empire Strikes Back. And little did I know I was maybe at one of the greatest double features ever made.
I mean, the one I remember from around that time was going and seeing the double feature of Willow and License to Drive. And that was not the greatest double feature of all time.
It's still not bad. But
not bad, but just saying between the two.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I just wasn't old enough to appreciate it. As my older brother, the Weasel Skull, and I went, my mom had just had our sister, and we were driving her nuts. So she's like, get these boys out of the house. And my dad took us to the double feature.
And he did bring you guys back home.
No, we found our way back. We found our way back. That's how it goes. We got dropped off a lot, but we, land navigation is a strong skill.
Here's a couple pieces of bread. Figure it out.
Here's a compass.
Here's the hint. You drop the pieces of bread as you're pulling away from the house. That helps you find your way back.
That does help. All right, let's take a look at the further adventures of Indiana Jones by Marvel Comics, number 9. And it was, I think it's September 83 issue, I want to say. And I've already described the cover to the listening audience, but you haven't gotten a chance to weigh in on your thoughts of it. So what do you think of the cover to number 9?
I don't want to upset you too much here, but I got to say it's... Okay, first of all, I'm going to say this. Why is James Bond being attacked by Kraven the Hunter?
It does look like James Bond. And James Bond was an influence on Spielberg and Lucas for Indiana Jones. Hence the absolute homage tuxedo.
Hang on. I'm sorry. I misread my notes here. I'm sorry. Why is Bruce Wayne be attacked by Kazar?
I feel like you have at least one more iteration of this riff in you. I feel like you have at least one more.
Something rich white guy in Tarzan. There we go.
Lamont Cranston being attacked by...
there we go. By Tarzan, yeah. So it's fine. But like I said with that little intro, it just doesn't feel like Indiana Jones. You want to see him in exotic locations, not in the middle of New York City. Now, if he's facing off with some guy in a crossroads in front of a statue of a lady holding a boll weevil, that would be an exotic location.
That's not far from my house.
Well, okay.
I don't disagree with you, by the way. This is probably one of the toughest sells. This is our 9th episode, and this is probably the toughest Indiana Jones cell cover because he is so not dressed as in the typical indie garb.
No, it just doesn't feel like Indiana Jones. It feels more like a Tarzan or a Kazar. It just doesn't feel right for some reason. So it's kind of a little bit boring almost. It's just a little bit of a boring cover. It's boring for Indiana Jones. It's an exciting cover. It's like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? But it's not an Indiana Jones exciting.
I agree. Because when you think of Indiana Jones, you do think of exotic places, not necessarily a major metropolitan cityscape. I mean, I like the art. I think Chaykin and Austin did a good job, especially I like the background. A lot of work went into those buildings and whatnot. But
just on the artwork, it's just, as far as a cover goes, it's boring. It's a well done cover. It's very pretty to look at, but it's boring. It doesn't really sell much. We find out when we get into the book, this is the final scene of the issue. So we're kind of like, we're giving away the cliffhanger and we're just waiting for that cliffhanger to show up.
That's true.
I would have rather have seen something that was more representative of the beginning quarter of the book.
Absolutely. Yeah, that makes sense.
That would have been a lot more fun. It would have been a lot more lead into this book. I went cold. I have not read any of the other books in this series. I've been following along with your podcast, but I haven't read any of the other issues. So jumping in first time into this book, I'm kind of like, Where are we at? What's going on? What's happening? And the cover gave me nothing.
Okay.
The cover I was just like, I'm waiting to find out what happens with this cover. But it's a great image that could have been used later on in the book, or possibly the beginning of the next book. But as far as a cover of this book, I don't like it. I just don't like it.
Yeah, I admittedly, of the 9, and I'm cheating a little bit because I have this in fancy hardbound, and my good friend Tim Benson put pictures of all the covers on the back. This is the least Indiana Jonesy of the first 9, and then I've got 3 more in this volume, and then I got to go to my second volume, and I can confidently say this is the least Indiana Jonesy of all the covers in my volume 1.
All right.
Even though it does have the exotic guy, which, just side note, I think it might just be the way the wind is blowing his loincloth, but I always thought that dude had a tail. It looks
I'm with you on that.
It looks like he has a tail.
It actually takes away a little bit from it being a good piece of artwork for that, because it's like, okay, so he's got a tail. No, it's just his loincloth. It's his loincloth. It's not, because it's really bad. And trust me, I'm going to get into this guy wearing a loincloth in the middle of New York City. That's another issue entirely. But yeah, it just doesn't. It doesn't fit.
No, I'm not going to fight you on it. I am not going to fight you on it. It's bold and daring in a different direction, and it didn't exactly work. So now you mentioned the front half of our story, and you come in at an interesting time. First of all, thanks for listening along to the show. And second of all, that you haven't read these, you come in on a real interesting issue.
Yeah.
Because 9 is the beginning of a new story arc. And oh, by the way, 9 ties directly to Raiders of the Lost Ark. And
yes,
a lot of the other issues haven't, aside from the appearance of Marion and Marcus. They've been around, but not as directly as this. And I'll let you run with your thoughts on story. Go ahead.
I kind of ran through the first part a little bit. So as I was reading the book, I was saying, oh, this is a fun romp with Indy and Sala pre-Indiana Jones. And then it went a little bit, and all of a sudden Brody is talking to Marion, and I'm going, time out. I need to go back and reread. Oh, no, this takes place after Raiders. So the beginning of the book, without that pretext context and without really knowing what they're going after, I was making the comments like, wow, this looks a lot like the idol from the first part of the Indiana Jones movie. Yes, because it is. But it really does feel like the early adventures of Indy and Sala. And I actually had to kind of screech the brakes a little bit, because I was kind of thinking of Sala in the film Raiders, and I was like, he's not that spry in this film, and this takes place after that. I kind of almost wish it was a little bit beforehand, but that being said, I like the fact that this is a real good mini episode, or maybe like a short film that takes place after Raiders, because it's a really cool concept. It's like, oh, let's touch back on what happened with that. And I haven't read it all. I don't know if it's really enough to make another movie out of, but I think it'd be a really cool, small little movie that would take place after Raiders, and it'd be a lot of fun. It's enjoyable. It's fast paced. It's energetic. It's the things we like. It's you're starting media res of this adventure, which, you're telling me that this is the start of it. Oh, that's even better. This is how they start off. They haven't gone through the chaos of finding the idol. They're just breaking in and stealing it back. Cool. So I do like that. I like the interplay between Indy and Sala. It feels like a lived-in friendship. Like I said, it just almost feels like it could be a younger one leading up to Raiders.
Yes, I think that's a great way to put it. I too enjoyed the romp. It was so cool to see Sala. 9 issues into the series, and hey, there's Sala. And oh, there's the idol, and then you kind of get to the end of them, stealing it back, but they're being chased by a couple of sort of mysterious people, and the mysterious people take off their masks, and one of them is a Jovitos native, which also ties back to Raiders. And the other one's like this mysterious blonde woman. I've read these before. I can't remember who she is. So I'm looking forward to reading the next issue. I'm like, who is she? So like, you have this also woman. 2
individuals in Marrakesh who would probably not be found dead in Marrakesh. Yeah.
They're an odd combination in Marrakesh. Yeah. You thought Indy and Sala were an odd combination. No.
They make sense. They make sense, but these two.
South American native dude and blonde woman, not sure how they combine forces. I really want to know more.
We'll just say she's Swedish just for the fun of it. Just to really mess with our heads,
Yeah. Knowing the Indiana Jones franchise, my money's on German.
Yeah. I know of him. I recognize him from photographs. It tracks.
It does. So Indy gets the idol back, which, a lot of people forget that he didn't get the idol at the end, at the beginning of Raiders. In fact, Belloc got it.
Yeah.
And
Belloc got it. And
he did what Belloc was going to do. Belloc was all about I'm going to find cool stuff and then sell it, make money, and it'll be in some private collectors. And Indy was like, I want to find cool stuff and make sure it's curated properly and stored properly. And I can respect that. But things get real interesting when we go to New York. And I'll let you weigh in on that part as well.
All right. So we end off with Indy being shot at by two people. So he knows that this is a hot item. So what does he do? He makes sure that there's a bunch of press at this big unveiling of him bringing this thing back, and he leaves it in Brody's hands. And we know Brody is not that reliable. And Brody's got a guard. So my question is, are all these people idiots? Because this just seems like the worst idea in the world. Is like, hey, I just stole this hot item from people that were shooting at me. So let's make sure everybody knows where it's going to be at and when I'm going to deliver it. And let's make sure we have no real security.
Invited the press, made a spectacle out of himself by being late, and
none of this makes sense. None of this tracks. In the movies, the way Harrison Ford presents Dr. Jones, Professor Jones, it shows him as kind of a bookish, nebbish. He's very quiet. He stutters when he's in front of a class sometimes, and when girls flirt with him. And he always looks uncomfortable when he's wearing a suit in that world. So having him be Bruce Wayne or James Bond coming into this party, I'm all late and look at me, it feels not authentic. And I think that's the other piece of it too. It's like this entire setup of a bunch of press, a bunch of this kind of stuff. No, he would have gone to Brody and say, look, I got it back. Can we make sure that this gets into a good place? And then Brody would maybe there'll be fanfare when the opening thing goes off. Brody would get it into the museum somehow. And that would be that. It doesn't feel authentic for this setup and this presentation. Indiana Jones being suave and debonair in his suit.
Fair assessment. The only slack I will cut it is just, I remind the listening audience of this almost every episode. We're reading a comic that is based off of one movie. We don't have the sequels yet. Although I don't think you need the sequels for that, because I think we learned in one movie, like you said, we saw him being a professor and an adventurer, and I think he's more comfortable in adventurer skin than he is in professor skin.
He is like a bit like Bruce Wayne or something, where his secret identity is Professor Jones.
Yeah.
And then he's adventurer Indiana Jones, and they are distinct characters. They really act differently. Even when he's like talking to Brody in his house and he's preparing and he's packing, that's where you start to see the mask slide from Professor Jones. And when he gets the gun, you know how careful I am. That's all of a sudden when you see this is part of his costume. He's holding the piece of his costumes. He's becoming Indiana Jones. So yeah, it's taking off the glasses of Clark Kent almost.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. So the cool thing is, again, we had Saul at the beginning. We see Marcus again. We see Marion again. He's having a good time with Marion. They're smooching, making up, feeling better about each other. There's 3 Jovitos natives that show up basically to steal this thing back, which I think is interesting because where's the blonde lady? That's my first question.
She's pulling the strings behind the scenes, and she's the one who sent these 3 guys in to get it back. She's got tough muscle. She doesn't need to get herself mixed up in this. I'm fine with her not being there. We know she's in the background. We know that she's the new Belloc, if you will say, he's not going to do the dirty work. Belloc in the first film, he's like, hey, go get him. I'm going to stay here and just... Opens
up a whole new box of questions for me, though, because, like, he used the Jovito... Belloc used the Jovitos to steal the idol. Mm-hmm. And now the Jovitos, this guy with the scar on his face and his 2 buddies, they show up and sort of violently take this item. But the whole time they're basically saying, hey, this is our cultural item from our tribe and we want it back, which I think is 100% legit. I don't agree with the violent way he's taking it. But then that doubles back on, well, then why the heck did you let Belloc? Why did you let Belloc take it in the first movie?
Because Belloc tricked them. And so they will never trust a white man again. A white woman, on the other hand, that's a whole different thing.
I guess, yeah. I mean, once they start getting sexy, you start trusting them again.
Here's my issue with this part, though, is, again, high fashion, lots of press, middle of New York City, 3 dudes wearing loincloths. I have questions.
Yeah. How did they get there? What was that trip like?
if they were in like waiters' costumes or something, and then they drop those to go into these, that's not solving the problem. You're trying to secretly and quietly with blow darts steal this idol and get out of there. So you strip into loincloths so you won't be recognized. Why?
Yeah, it's an odd choice.
Because back in the first part, they're dressed up in the big robes and they're looking like they're Arabian. I mean, they've got the turbans on, they've got the mat. They look like they fit in there until they take off their headscarves. It's a perfect disguise for the area that they're in because they know they don't fit. Same should be here. They should be in waiters' uniforms, but then you see the scar that's on the one guy's hands and you see them pull out these primitive weapons. That would have worked. That would have explained everything. But you got them drawn in here in things that are just absolutely inappropriate for the place they are and makes them stand out on a secret, quiet, stealthy mission. It doesn't fit. That's where, come on, I want to have a fun adventure. I want to enjoy this, but this just doesn't work for me. I don't know why.
Honestly, if they gave this to me to fix, I would have had these guys show up in some sort of, native but regal Javito's garb and be like, hey, this is ours. This is our statue of our people, and we want it back. And I mean, Indiana Jones has proven time and time again that he's cool with that. I mean, he gave the Shankara stones back. He, kept the Ark out of the Nazis' hands, although that did end up in a warehouse. That's probably for the best, though, because that was a weapon that didn't need out the world. But he's got a history of doing the right thing, and I think he probably would have been like, Marcus, we got to give this thing back, but it doesn't make for an exciting comic book.
No, but you could still have built tension there in some ways by saying, well, we're going to turn this back. Well, we don't believe you. We decide we're going to take it back by force. But even then coming in, but if they're going the sneaky route, if we want to write this with them going the sneaky route, then have them dressed up sneaky.
Yeah, waiters and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden they strip down the loincloths because that's what they're comfortable with. Start climbing around ledges and rooftops. And that's pretty much where the story ends, is Indy chases them out onto these ledges high up and ends up dangling for his life. And this Jovito's dude is stomping his fingers as he's trying to grip on. And we have almost a literal cliffhanger. It's not a cliff, but it's a high place.
It's a cliffhanger. And I do like this ending. I think the ending does work. It's a literal cliffhanger. It's very serialized format, throwback to what Indiana Jones reminds us of. So all of that is good. Just do this all again, but color all those characters wearing waiters' outfits.
Yeah, I think that's a really good solution.
Or, like you said, rewrite the story where it's a delegation coming in to, like, dressed in traditional garbs and everything. And we're coming to do this, but something in there has set them off, or they're going in there to say, to ask for it, but they're also going in there, we're going to ask for it.
Right.
We're going to ask for it with our fists up, and that's going to start the fight. Because you're right. Indiana Jones, I'd like to give this back to you. Well, thank you. We're going to take it back. Well, wait a minute.
Let's all calm down. Maybe they hurt somebody unnecessarily. Yeah, I get what you're saying. But
once again, just put them, just dress them for the storyline and make it make sense. So, but one thing I will say, the entire story, I love the artwork. I really love the artwork. It's that old school, old Marvel house style. You look at it, you've got the old comic book in your hands, and you just know exactly what you're looking at. I like experimental comics. I like experimental artwork, and I think that it's got its place, and it's got its place in certain stories. But when you're telling just a straight up action comic type story, there's an old blanket feeling when you're just looking at this nice, clean, simple art that's just straightforward, clean, and simplistic, and you like it. You can see the movement. You can see everything else that you enjoy.
Absolutely. That's Dan Reed and Danny Bulanati, and I was going to ask you to weigh in on the art, so I'm so glad you took it there already. I think it is real. It's just that real serviceable, sort of trippy era. Get it done on time, make it look nice. Yeah, it was cool. I enjoyed it too. It has that comfort blanket. It's a really good way of putting it.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts before we discuss your ad from this issue?
No, I think that's all I've really got there. I don't like coming in here poo-pooing something that you really like, because I do like it. I enjoyed the story. There were some parts of it that just made me stop and say, wait a moment.
I'm with you.
It doesn't feel right. So
I'm with you. I mean, there's a lot to like. Like you mentioned, the front half is a lot of fun with Sala. And then the back half is fun, but it just how did these three guys, loincloths, Did they fly on a plane? Did they take a boat? How did they get through the streets? Yeah.
And when did Indiana Jones become Bruce Wayne? I don't know, but here we are.
There we are. All right, let's switch gears. And there's a lot of great ads from the 80s in here that we looked at. And before we clicked record, you and I decided that we liked the double page, boldly yellow spread of what you could order from Mile High Comics in Boulder, Colorado. So let me know what you're thinking when you look at that ad.
There was one of our episodes that we did on our podcast, and we like to take the story and we kind of do a little retelling of the script and do it very humorously. And I wrote in that script that from the action of one page, the next page was bright yellow with a bunch of words on it with Mile High Comics coming in and destroying everything. And wait, what? Reading comics back in the day, most of the time it was fine, but you're reading through and you expect ads here and there. But you're reading a comic book and you get into the flow of the comic and you flip the page, and instead of seeing any of the characters you've been with, you're just seeing bright yellow warning light. Hello, hello, hello. Buy our stuff. Mile High Comics was the interruption that you never wanted in anything you were watching on TV. It's like, oh my gosh, the hero's about to die, and now I've got to buy a bed. So I love Mile High Comics. I think it's always fascinating to look at those Mile High Comics and any other comic book selling company at that time, just to kind of say, man, if I was alive back then and I had $20, I would buy so many copies of X-Men Giant Size Annual #1. Oh, buddy. It's like, what of these books that I'm seeing here for nothing on the penny can I buy now? And I would be a billionaire. It'd be fantastic. But just in remembering reading comics or looking at any old comics now, and you're going through the comic book and you see that double yellow page, it hits you like a punch if you're really invested in the story. And it's very much of its time kind of thing, because you don't see any of that now. You don't see places advertising buy our books and stuff, which you needed that back then. But now you got the internet. So there you go.
Yeah, this was definitely the internet, and they crammed a bunch of stuff. And I did want to particularly just draw your attention to, you could buy the Incredible Hulk #181, which is the very first appearance of Wolverine, for $17.50.
Oh, geez.
Now, true story, listeners. Your boy Jared here bought Incredible Hulk 181 that ended up grading out at a 7.5. I bought that book in 1999 for $4. So I actually beat this price at Mile High, but that's a tale for another day. Yeah, the Mile High comic set is definitely a staple, no pun intended, to the old comic.
Nicely said. Nicely said.
Thank you, sir. Have you ever ordered comics from a comic, like from Mile High, or East Coast was another one that would take out a full page?
I want to say back then I did not, because I was so young that I was like, I didn't want to grab my parents' credit card and they wouldn't write me a check for that. Are you kidding me? No, I would go down and I'd find different comic book stores to go find my books. In fact, a little off topic on that, but I remember one time my parents and I did a trip up to Vancouver, Canada, and we truck and trailer kind of thing. And I had my friend TJ with me at the time, and we were both into comic books. And think about this, back in the early 90s, we figured out up in Vancouver, Canada, how to get from the camping park that we were at to a comic book store in the city via bus. And I swear we were only like 12 or 13. And that was okay.
The glory days.
And I'm thinking back now, I'm like, now that's not a problem. I got myself a cell phone that can help me make that all possible. A cell phone to call my parents if I got in trouble. No, we didn't have anything like that. We had a vision in mind. We knew we wanted to buy some comic books in Canada, and we were going to figure out how to make that happen using a map. But back to this, I never bought any back when I was a kid, but I have now, and that's all been online. I know that with my podcast, I try to make sure that I've got an actual physical comic of all the things we talk about on our podcast. And so I make sure that I've got one of those. So I use a lot of that because I've looked at all my local stores. I can't find the book I wanted. I can find it here through Mile High or some of the other ones online. And I've always been quite happy with the purchases I've got, but I never did that when I was a kid. How about you?
Just one time I ordered from the East Coast Comics. Jason and I did when we were in Germany. It was really hard to get American comics, especially. Shoot, it was hard to find German comics. But yeah, we ordered a batch from East Coast Comics. That would have been about 87, 88. And the funny thing about it is it's sort of a lost art on kids today. Remember back when it was like wait 6 to 8 weeks for delivery. And then, of course, we lived in Germany, so you might as well tack on another. It was months. And it was to the point where we had forgotten that we ordered it. So it was really exciting when it showed. I was like, oh, yeah, we ordered all these. And I can still remember some of the ones that were in there. There's a lot of Spidey from the black costume era in there. I remember that. So
the best way I can kind of put that to today's standards is Kickstarters. Kickstarters is about the same kind of thing you get. Like, you do a Kickstarter, you're like really excited, I'm going to buy this. And eventually like, hey, we funded it, give us your information. You give the information, and it's going to be a while till we get the thing together. And then you forget about it. And then there's a knock at the door, and you're like, what's this? I don't remember. And then it's like Christmas. You open up like, oh my gosh, here's that game I bought 2 years ago. Yes.
Literally yesterday, I did a live stream of me unboxing and putting together the new G.I. Joe Classified Dragonfly that I backed from Hasbro's Pulse thing. And same deal. Like, I backed it, I don't even know when. And it just showed up yesterday. I was like, oh, what? Hooray.
Amazon has spoiled us. We need something now. We ordered, like, we know we're going to get it. Even those comic books I ordered, it's like, oh, yeah, we've got them online. These are the ones we know we have. We'll put in the order. We'll get them pulled. We'll get them in the mail. 2 weeks, maybe.
Right, tops, yeah.
Amazon, day after, next, not a problem. Kickstarter is about the closest thing we've got to what that old feeling was, is like, we ordered something and we were excited when we ordered it.
Then we forgot.
6 months later, I'm excited again because I got a new present.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Okay, that pretty much is Indiana Jones #9 done and dusted. I think its biggest plus is that it really ties into the first movie. And its biggest minus, as we talked about, which is some of the sort of the details in the storytelling. Although it's neat to look at Indiana Jones with Professor Jones, I think we both agree he's more fun when he's in Marrakesh running around with Sala.
Yeah.
So that's the big takeaways for me. Now I have to thank Rick for coming down to the Temple of Longbox. Hopefully you can do all the booby traps backwards to get out, because that's the hardest part. So if they be thinking about that.
What I did is that I used some bones I found in the basement. They possibly belonged to Clinton. I don't know, may have. But I just kind of stuck those in all the wheels and all the areas.
Oh, good thinking.
And then on my way out, I'll just pull them back out and toss them down in the basement.
Yeah, rest in peace, Clinton. I guess.
I'm not saying he's dead. I'm just saying I found bones down there and I couldn't see him. He may be behind one of the boxes. I don't know.
We'll look into it. While I'm looking into the possible death of our basement dwelling friend Clinton Robeson, would you let the folks know where they can find you and your podcasting stuff?
Sure. I co-host a show called Unpacking the Power of Power Pack with my pal Jeff, who cannot run, cannot jump over alleys, and always drops the idol, if you know what I mean. Also, you can find, if you go to our website and look up Jeff and Rick Present, and look up Tales of Tales. It is a comic strip that my daughter does and comes out every week, and it's very cute, and it's about cats because she loves cats. So those are my plugs.
I love the fact that she's sticking with that. That is so cool. My son does something very similar. It's just really neat to see kids that young with that work ethic and that tenacity. So kudos to her. Tell her I said she's doing a great job. And when she says that, the guy who wrote Hamilton versus Versa did a great job, it's going to be great. I'm sure that's how that conversation is going to go.
I can just point, the guy who drew those two pictures of Hermione and Ginny, the pictures that are of the Harry Potter characters on the book pages on her wall. Yeah, that guy. And she'll say, who?
Who? That guy? That guy's a turd. But anyway, he'll be like, yeah, it is what it is. I thank you again for being here, bud.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to try not to get by blow darts with you.
Thanks. You can find me at Yard Sale Artist on X, Facebook, and Instagram. It's all at Yard Sale Artist. You can check out my artwares at www.theyardsaleartist.com. And of course, we'd love for you to check out the Longbox Crusade in all its locations. We are at Longbox Crusade on X, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. You name it, you can probably find us out there at Longbox Crusade. Of course, you can call and leave a voicemail, 707-532-5269. 707-532-LBOX. We'd love to hear from you. And this is one of our shorter shows, so I will just say thank you to all the Patreon members out there. Our Crusaders Club members are the best, and they keep this stuff going. Thank you so much. I look forward to reading your names on a longer episode in the near future. With that, thanks for joining us again down here in the Temple of Longbox, and we will see you soon.
We named the dog Indiana. The dog? You are named after the dog?
Got a lot of fond memories of that dog.
What did you find, Junior?
Junior? Dad?
Geez, what does it always mean? It's Junior. That's his name. Henry Jones Jr.
Like Indiana.
May we go home now, please?